listening to the First City Lax podcast, brought to you every week from the Florida Panhandle. Coach John and Coach JP explore the best and worst of lacrosse on the Gulf Coast, so strap your helmets on and let's go.
And welcome back once again to the First City Lacrosse podcast, the second greatest lacrosse podcast on the planet. I am your host, Coach John, here as always with my co-host, Coach JP. We're doing something a little bit different today, where both of us are hanging out in the same room. So if the sound quality is not quite what you expect, that's our fault. We thought we would try something new so that you guys can enjoy the show a little bit better. As we continue to improve this, we're going to take all those suggestions and recommendations from you and continue to move forward to bring you the absolute best content in the best format that we can. With that being said, JP, welcome.
Happy New Year. Glad to be here.
That's right. And we have a very special guest with us today. For those of you who've been around lacrosse in the Panhandle for a while, you're probably going to recognize him. But for those that are listening outside the area, we've got Mr. Jeff Sherman with us today. Jeff is a longtime lacrosse player, coach, and official. He's been involved in the game since, do I say it? Before I was born. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be here, and great to catch up with a couple of panhandlers. Most people know I left and live down in the Keys now. It's a little bit warmer down in the Keys, and happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it. And I first ran into you when I very first got involved in lacrosse, which was about 10 years ago. And I remember you being the official, pretty much the lead official at almost all of our rec and our high school games. So can you talk a little bit about sort of your background, how you got to where you and I met, and then what happened, basically in the last 10 years and where you ended up and how you ended up in Key West, of course.
Sure. Do you mind if I just give a little background first?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I started this great game in 1972 and played in junior high. I was one of only 6 teams in the Boston area that had lacrosse back then. And went off and played in prep school in New Hampshire for 4 years. Then I played at Springfield College for 4 years, and that will bring me up to 1984. I was a goalie and had some good years playing and a lot of good memories. I started Falmouth, Mass, Cape Cod, the youth lacrosse program in 1986 and ran that till 1999. I had no kids in the game, just for the love of the game, like you, John, when you started. So I started a second program in Novi, Michigan, and did that for a couple of years, and ended up down at Ocean Springs in Mississippi for my job. And we went there because they had a lacrosse program, and also my boys played hockey, and there was a program in Biloxi. I coached for 1 year, and I realized when I got down to the Gulf Coast that there were no officials, and I quite frankly had not officiated anywhere in between. I had coached also, I didn't mention, but I coached girls lacrosse at Bridgewater State College. I was the goalie coach, and this is when the girls switched over to the men's style goaltending. And so, long story short, I started the program and recruited. There were a couple of guys that were reffing already that were new to the game, and we just started the program. We called it the Gulf Coast Lacrosse Officials Association. And back then, it was kind of a mix of Ocean Springs. We'd play up in New Orleans, but at the same point, we played the Mobile teams. And then, of course, Perdido came on board, and Gulf Breeze and all the others. So we ended up having those jamborees, and that's where we met officially.
Yep.
And by that point, we had a pretty good contingent of officials. And, so we would show up and we'd ref all day. And, you remember that it would be a full day, 4 teams, a lot of stress on your side. Sure, I had to get the officials and get the assigning going, but it was smooth sailing, and you did a great job. I remember all the youth programs that started, but there was something about Perdido Key, the facility that we played at, and your drive. I remember you were new to lacrosse like most people on the Panhandle, but it's fun to watch people just become contagious with the game. And that's the beauty of lacrosse. There's no other sport, in my opinion, that offers that way to be contagious and bring your kids through it and learn as you go. So that pretty much brings me up to speed. We also obviously started the high school officiating program in the Panhandle, and that's when I moved over to Destin. And at the same point, if everybody remembers Duke Pope, we were talking one game, we were reffing, and we found ourselves waiting for the boys' game because all the high school games were double headers, and the girls didn't have many officials. And so we agreed that we needed to do something as an officiating group. And there were some coaches that were absolutely loved it, and others were, there was a few that didn't like the men around the girls' game, and that's the way it was back then. But I think we struggled to get it off the ground, but I think today it's in good shape. There's been some great refs coming through the area. And, I look back and say, at least we had the games and the girls were able to play with two officials. We may not have been the best at the beginning, but I think today, from what I hear, everything's going well. And I left in 2000 to move down to Marathon in the Keys to seek warmer weather. And after a few years and a couple of knee replacements, I got my first assignment to ref February 15th, and I officiate two high schools, Key West High School and Coral Shores out of Tavernier Creek. And they're the two lacrosse programs on the Keys. With that said, that brings me up to speed. Kind of a quick summary of my life.
Yeah, wow, that is amazing. And let me just say thank you for saying those nice things about my program and our youth program. I will offer one correction is that I did actually have kids in the game. Now I did it when I started coaching. I did it because my boys wanted to play and I didn't know anything about it. So I figured the best way to learn was to just get involved. And so I started coaching, and then obviously the next year became director, and soon after that we were managing the entire program, and then ended up being vice president of the league for the first year, where we kind of branched out and did our own thing with just Florida and Alabama. But all those things were made possible because of the guys that started it, kind of like you, who came in and just basically set the framework so that guys like me could build on that. So thank you for saying the
Yep.
nice things. Thank you for building up a program that is very robust today. Our youth program, I think when we started, Jeff, there were 6 teams between Gulf Breeze and Biloxi, maybe. Does that sound right?
Now, Ocean Springs, it was Ocean Springs, Pascagoula, Gulf Breeze, Mobile, usually Lower Alabama, and then you guys and Gulf Breeze were pretty much it.
Yeah, Pensacola, I think, was in there at the time.
Yeah, that's right. Kevin Harmon had the Pensacola program.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I think I was counting. I counted 7.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it started with 7, and now we have 7 alone in Florida, just in this area, plus another handful in Alabama, or in the lower part of Alabama, I guess. And Ocean Springs, I think, still has a team. But the bottom line is, it continues to grow. It continues to thrive, and we have coached hundreds and hundreds of kids. So it's been awesome, man. It's been awesome to watch, including my own boys. My own boys are now, they're playing in college now. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I did see that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really excited. They're playing together, which is super cool.
That's
I don't think, yeah, not too many people get the opportunity, I think, to see that, or players get a chance to do that. But my youngest son, when I was asking him which schools he was going to consider going to, shook his head. He was like, you know what? I'm not going to go anywhere that my brother's not going to be at. Wherever he's going, that's where I'm going to be. And I was like, hey, good enough for me. And so that's what they did.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had one that played back up in Massachusetts, and then my other one was at Florida State, playing at the club, that MCLA level, and that was the year they went to the quarterfinals in the MCL playoffs. So they had a really good run.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I was there last year for my son's team, and they went to, I think they lost in the second round to Air Force. And Air Force, the Air Force club team.
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like all the guys from the D1 program that either didn't want the competition anymore, or couldn't keep their grade, couldn't be eligible for whatever reason. They're playing on the club team. They were fun to watch. So, all right. Before we get too far into it, I've got a couple of rapid fires for you. You ready for them?
Sure.
I ask these to everybody, so JP is going to help keep track. We're starting a little list of best books and podcasts, but what book or podcast are you kind of paying attention to right now? What book are you reading? What podcast you listen to, if any YouTube shows or people or things?
I'm really not. I don't do podcasts per se, and books. I'm guilty. I haven't read in a long time, but I will say my favorite book was The Old Man and the Sea, Ernest Hemingway,
Yeah, there you
Fishing the
go.
Marlin. Still fresh in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. And then are you following any teams right now? I know you said you got those two teams in the Keys there. Are you following any teams besides the ones that you're going to be officiating for?
No, I do follow college lacrosse pretty close. Having played in Division III up in New England, I keep tabs. My college, Springfield College, used to be a perennial. They were national champs the year I left in Division II, and the coach is on his 42nd year, and he's not the most winning coach, I believe, but he's second to Berkman at Salisbury State. But 42 years is an impressive run, and it's called the Springfield Lacrosse Mafia. There's more people out of Springfield coaching, officiating lacrosse than any other institution in the country. And it really is, a lot of it has to do with Coach Bugby. It's really cool. So I stay close to that program and, the New England scene, if you will. And of course, try to watch as many games as I can on TV.
Yeah, man, that's 42 years is incredible. I can't even imagine. Um, that's not just a job at that point. That is just,
No, as he said, it's a lifestyle. The big thing for him is not about winning and losing. While that's a big part, it's who are you going to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? And, you talk about life's lessons through the game. He is the epitome of the game. And he says, I don't recruit a kid for 4 years. I recruit a kid for life. And although I only played for him my last 2 years, we still have a bond. And it's mind blowing.
no, that's awesome.
Well, it's not just about the sport, trying to teach them to be better young men too. So that says a lot right there.
I'll tell you a quick one. I had my challenges in college every once in a while, and he would grab you by the ear, sit you down, and say, this is what you did wrong. This is what you need to do. And this is how you're going to do it. And I mean, you know, he disciplined you in a way that made you wake up and yes, sir. So it was really cool.
I think, as coaches, we have sort of that unique perspective and opportunity also because, we only get those players for maybe a few hours after school or maybe even only a few hours a week. But one of the things I tell all my players first, basically first practice is I outline my role. I say specifically, I am your coach. I am not your friend. I am not your buddy. I am not, hey, bro. I am not your parents, and I'm not your teacher. I am here to coach you. And so if I'm offering you coaching, it's because I see something in you that there's a potential you're not reaching. It's not personal. I'm never going to be the guy to personally attack you, but I will call you out when you're not performing. And that's the expectation. And we set that groundwork early. And so they know that when I'm sitting there and I'm getting in their face and I'm saying, you're not performing, in whatever it happens to be, then they understand it's not personal. Coach sees something better in me. And I think, coaches like, what you had just explained, that relationship, that bond you have, that kind of relationship is unique and it carries over well past the actual time that you're coaching. We see it all the time.
Yeah, but JR, I've noticed like the boys not necessarily having a bad day where their discipline's a little bit off, making them do gassers and all that. And JR's giving them really fun stuff to do, and they're all smiling the whole damn time. That says a lot versus like, hey, cursing and, heavy sign and all that. So it's a good relationship.
It's not always fun. But I think they understand the purpose behind it. There are some things they understand. It's team building. We really don't do a lot of running for punishment. There's a couple of times it's just like, if you're not conditioned, that's one thing. You're going to run extra. But if it's just something, I'm not going to take a kid out of practice who needs reps just to go make him run because he dropped a ball. I'm going to make sure that he gets more reps. You don't need to run. You need to hit the rebounder. You need to hit the wall. So, okay, cool. Have you ever looked at any of these other coaches? I mean, obviously talking about your old coach, have you tried to pattern any of your officiating or anything like that after some officials that maybe you respect and look up to?
Yeah, I have the good fortune of coming out of the Boston area where lacrosse has been going on since the 70s. And there are a couple of guys that I've known that actually refed me in junior high school. And one of them is still very much involved in the training and whatnot. So what I ended up doing as I started building the lacrosse program, I was very close to the USL, and I would go up there every year to their clinics, and got real friendly with a lot of old friends from the Northeast. So I would say my training background and ability to work with great refs helped develop the program. And the guy in particular is Jim Carbonneau. And Jim's coached it, refed at every level. He's done Division One. He's done all the national championships, and he's probably in his late 70s now, and he still refs a little bit. But I had him come down and do the training for us one year, and that's who I model. I'm not a very even keeled guy. I got thin skin for the love of the game, and Jim, I tried hard every day to be like him and just let it go in one ear and out the other. But he was definitely my idol and still is, as far as he's just a good person on top of everything else.
That's awesome. And I will say also, I would never have guessed that you would think that you have a thin skin. I've seen you on the field, and I've seen you handle unruly spectators and coaches, and it is all business with you. And I've always appreciated
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Even if I have a disagreement, I know you haven't ref one of my games in quite a while. I don't think I ever had a disagreement with you on the field because I knew that if I even opened my mouth, it was game over for me. So I was just like, nope, whatever he says, good enough for me.
Well, the reason why I was so tough, and I tried to get my refs to be tough, is that lacrosse was a new game back then. And there was a lot of football coming into the game, and it was very physical. And as we all know now, the game is about finesse. The takeout hits and things like that are a thing of the past. And so, what we were trying to do, or what my goal was to do, was to make sure that the new guys coming into lacrosse, the new gals coming into lacrosse, understood the beauty of the game, and that we wouldn't allow the bad stuff. And so I was probably at some points, I'm sure I was pretty harder than others. But my argument was always, if you're not sure, just throw the flag. We can always pick it up off the ground. So, but you had some coaches and clearly some parents that had no clue about the game. While I give them a high five for coaching and stepping in, some of the stuff they would say was just beyond my imagination, and that's where the thin skin kicked in. And so I had a lot of respect for coaches in the first place because, John, one of the things you don't realize is, A, you're not getting paid, and how many hours a year are you putting in? And I would tell the refs all the time that if this guy's screaming and yelling at you, think about it this way: you are getting paid for your work, okay? And that coach has put in about 48 hours this week in volunteering his time and working with the kids, and understand that. And if you can understand it from that side, you'll be a better ref for it. And so that was one of my comments all the time.
Yeah. Wow. I have not heard that, but I know you're right. And JP knows too, because we've both been out there. We've coached. We've got from, well, I know for me personally, I've gone from coaching high school practice for 2 or 3 hours straight to a youth practice for 2 hours. And then there's the admin and everything else on the side. It comes out to be fundamentally a full-time job that you're not getting paid for, that you're often paying more into it. Now, I will say that the payment is in the reward of seeing the
Yes.
players grow, and our claim to fame in most of these club coaches claim to fame out here because of the programs and the way we run them. I would venture to guess somewhere in the ballpark of 75 to 80%. I know that number is valid for our program, but 75 to 80% of these kids who play youth, like by the time they reach that 7th, 8th grade level, they go on to play in high school. There's not very many that skip high school once they've played on the youth side because they do have that passion and they understand that, it's not really a complicated sport. It can be complex at times, but it's so fun and it's so invigorating and getting out there on the field. And for us as coaches, obviously your playing days are behind us. But yeah, it's an addictive thing, and being out there and being a part of their success is huge. going to their college signings is amazing. It's always a great experience. Seeing them play in college is even better. It's like, man, I coached that kid when she first picked up a stick, or the first time he picked up a stick and threw the ball and it went straight to the ground, and now he's ripping 95-mile-an-hour shots from the top of the box. Like, yeah, we did some good things. So that's cool, man.
Yep.
What do you got
I'm
for him?
gonna go back and say one thing.
Yeah.
You said fundamental.
I did.
That's gonna have to be a word of every episode, is how many times fundamentals comes out of somebody's mouth. So, because it's true, fundamentals and basics. So, in retrospect, being an older, not trying to offend you or anything.
No offense taken.
Being an older referee, what would you say to your younger self nowadays before a game?
I would say that I need to slow down, take a deep breath, and relax. When you get into some of the high school games, they get heated, and it's real easy to fall into that and not kind of keep your composure, except especially when you see some kind of a takeout check where somebody gets injured and people are looking at you. You made the call, you adjudicated the call properly, whether he was ejected or got a 3-minute penalty or whatever, but you can't stop that. All you can do is manage the game the best you can, and try to, I used to talk players down all the time. Don't go that, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And, invariably sometimes they would. And so that really bothered me when I saw that stuff. And I would say today, like today, I ref the 2 high schools down here. I'm just a ref now. I just show up my assignment. I work with 2 really good guys that come down from Virginia for the winter, and we run a 3-man, and it's a real treat to just go out and ref and take a deep breath and just enjoy the game.
Well, it's interesting, like your story saying you came down here and you were reffing in Ocean Springs. Like, to me, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Because the sport is growing that much. So, where do you see your future in lacrosse?
I think I'm pretty much winding up my career. I don't know how much longer I'm going to officiate. I'm definitely back this year. I had both my knees replaced, so I'm good there. The wheels feel great. I had cancer last year, which I'm in great shape now. I'm in remission, and life is good. But that episode last year with the cancers kind of changed my outlook. And so I went and bought the big boat, and I'm going to try to fish a lot more. Lacrosse, it's easy to do. It's a couple of nights a week. And I don't think I'm going to go any further than that and just kind of go off in the sunset. I've done my part. We talk about getting involved and growing the game. I feel like I did that in 2 areas, in Michigan and Massachusetts. And, I'm happy I can, I've laid the foundation. I understand, Brian Johnsy's gone with the officials group now up in the Panhandle, but I believe Tyler has kind of taken a bigger hand in it.
Yep.
And it's nice to know that what you started is carried on. And that to me that's my high five.
Well, we appreciate it, and like I said, it's like you think of that part of Mississippi, you think of Key West. Like, Key West has a lacrosse team. People, what? So that really says a lot for the sport, and
Yeah.
for it too. So thank you.
Well, it's Naval Academy influence because of the Navy base down there. So, and I will tell you, the Key West Stadium is probably the nicest stadium I've ever played in high school. Turf field, unbelievable, high end. It's really good. Yeah. So that's what it's all about. Is John? I think for a coach, and I have plenty of players from the past that still call me coach and say, I see him in the summertime and whatnot. So I think those are the kinds of things that I can walk away with, and knowing that the officiating has carried on and the tradition is still there.
Yeah. Any regrets though? Anything you look back and wish, like, man, I wish I'd done that differently?
No, I think that growing the officials the way I did was, it was, I put in 100 hours a week. Sometimes I think if my job ever knew how much time I put into officiating and scheduling and all that stuff, I tried to ask for help and start a board, and I didn't get much help. And so I thought to myself, well, at least I get them out on the field. That's more than I can ask for. So I think I would have gotten more people involved, more in the administration side to help me support. That's probably it. But I have no regrets in the training and the relationships. And, quite frankly, all the coaches in the area were very helpful. Of course, Duke was a big part of that because he was running the Destin program and then, was an official and really helped. He was my kind of my go-to. And yeah, so I don't think I have any regrets or would change anything other than getting more people involved from the clinical side. I mean, from the administration side.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, what do you got for him? This is the man.
One other thing I think of is like you're talking about, old players kind of saying coach. I think that says a lot about what you do for someone too, because versus, someone them saying, hey, Mr. Hart or Mr. Ryan, or like they're saying, hey, coach. Like it could be 10 years later. And I think that's has a lot to do with respect and what you treat them and, how you teach them to play.
Yeah, I think that's you wonder, what it's going to be like down the road. And those are the kinds of things that I feed off of, knowing that the people that respected you, that liked you, that you helped. I mean, I had a kid from Falmouth that he was a two-time All-American at Springfield. He went to Springfield because of me. I asked him one day, I said, why'd you go to Springfield? And he goes, because that's where you went. I was coaching the high school at the time and running the youth program. He was a two-time All-American and won the national championship. I didn't have anything to do with that. He was just such a gifted athlete. But you know, the fact that he said I went to Springfield because of you meant that he really looked up to me. And today he runs one of the biggest youth programs in the state and has it's called Cape Cod Lacrosse. And he's just he's made a living at it. He's one of those that's not in it for the money per se. He's got to make a living, but he's not you know, it's some of the money grabs that go on today are mind-boggling. But so that's about it. And then I guess I would say probably one of my biggest satisfactions also is you mentioned Tyler Sheeler.
Mm-hmm.
I met Tyler. We used to go out to all the teams and do a preseason talk about the rules and whatnot. So the coaches asked me to come, and I met Tyler at a parent meeting in Pensacola.
Yeah.
And as soon as he told me he was a hockey ref, I said, this is a no-brainer. And he said he wanted to officiate because hockey, there's three sports, well, really two sports that lend to the game. Basketball, the mechanics are the same. You have a lead and a trail. And then in hockey, you have the play on just like lacrosse. So when you watch the ref in hockey, he's got his arm in the air. That's the same thing as me throwing a flag down, and the play continues until possession change. And I have to tell you, Tyler's probably my proudest official because he's coaching at the college level. And 10 years ago,
Yeah.
he was a parent in the stands that just moved down from the Dakotas. And I mean, let's be honest, he's gifted, right? He can run like a gazelle and he's very smart and he's got a great head on his shoulders. And, look at him today. He could go division one if he really wanted to.
Yeah, he definitely could.
Absolutely, he could. Did he tell you that we've already interviewed him?
I heard, yes.
And
Yeah.
he said, oh, you got to get Jeff Sherman on. And I was just like, he's already on my list, man. Like, I'm hitting more of the local guys first. But yeah, we knew, like JP and I knew as soon as we started this, like you, as being one of the originators, one of the original guys who started out here, like it had to be you. Like you had to go. So.
Well, the other guy that I really am happy with was Brian Johnsey, who took over the whole program when I left, because that was my biggest fear was who's going to take it and run it. And Brian and that's what happens is he took it to a next level that I could only take it to such a level. He took it to the next level. I mean, he's a consummate professional and he had experience with the football refs group, whereas I leaned on. We were First Coast lacrosse officials, which was out of Jacksonville, and I had good connections there. And you need to be in an association to officiate in Florida high school. And so I used that. But Brian had a lot of leverage internally and locally, and that made a big difference. But he did a fantastic job of taking it to the next level. I stayed in touch with him all through the years. So.
Yeah, and I think he's stepped away from lacrosse, but I believe he's still reffing football.
Yes, he is. He's down in the Tampa area. His son, I think, will be a senior this year.
Yeah.
And yep. So there's another father-son duo that never knew much. Well, he did ref girls, and he's very good at girls official. And I hate to keep plugging, but last year Jamie Hansen,
Yep.
who also gets a high five for standing up a program. I can't think of the gent's name. I found him as he was working at a Office Depot, and he lives down. He was a girls official, and Jordan, who came in right after me, they went and represented the Panhandle as the state championship in the girls' game. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. You don't get called from fascia. I call it fascia. You just don't get that phone call. So to get that is beyond my wildest imagination. So those are the kinds of things, JP, you talk about that I really sit well with me.
It's exciting, all of it. Like every year, it gets more exciting. I'm addicted to it. I know he is. You are too. It's just you learn so much more, and then every new person you meet, you learn more stories, and then the game just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Key West, man, come on. People talk about playing in Maryland and Massachusetts, but Key West, give me a break.
Yeah. No, it's a real treat to go down there. And the first time I stepped on the field there, of course, I was down to one knee at that point, so I was just dragging. But it was, I stood in that stadium and I said, "Holy smokes! I'm at the southernmost point of the United States, roughing a game." And it was a beautiful evening. The sun's going down, the whole 9 yards.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, before we wrap up here, I want to get, one of the things we focus on here is highlighting our local players and officials and coaches. And I think you've done a great job doing that. Before we let you go, what is one thing that you would want them to know? Like from someone from your experience, from all the places you've been, the lacrosse that you've reffed and coached and played, what one thing, if you could share one thing with players and coaches and officials who are coming up today, who maybe only have a year or two, or maybe they're brand new, what is the one thing that you would want to share?
I think as I look back, I think over the years my place was in the youth groups, and because I really enjoyed teaching the game, and I wasn't a great X's and O coach at the high school level. I could, I was a goalie, so I could coach, but I found my niche in the youth, and I think what I try to say is fall in love with the game. Just fall in love with the game, and the rest will take care of itself. And um, I would say that's it. Once the skills start, the confidence takes over. And we talk about all the time of respecting the game and doing this and doing that, but I don't find that to be true in a lot of places. And it's still a lot of big hits and parents screaming and yelling and just that out of control kind of mentality. And really respect the game and understand, yes, battle hard during the game, shake hands after. And folks, I was always on the parents, but root on your kids, root on your team, and leave the officials alone. They've got enough to worry about. And I've asked a bunch of parents in the past to come officiate, and not me. But so I'd say to the kids, listen to your coaches more than anything. Listen to your trainers. Don't listen to the stands, but embrace the game, and it will take you to places you've never been. I've basically officiated in 32 states.
Holy cow.
And, I know there's some out there that have reffed everywhere, but I'm very fortunate that once you become an official and you really get connected, it's easy to get invited to these tournaments and go do this stuff. There's a couple of guys from Louisiana. I think they're probably well past me on states of officiating. But,
How many states
you know,
lacrosse?
yeah. Yeah, so it's just a great game, and it's done so much for me. And the people you meet, JP, you mentioned it. When you go outside of your zone, out of the panhandle, and you mention the game of lacrosse, at least for me, having grown up in the game, I met people in the panhandle that I knew 30 years ago, and it's just this fraternal connection. There's no other sport that comes close to it with the bonds and whatnot. And your kids, when they go off to college, they've got new friends, and it just they go and play club lacrosse, after, and it's incredible how the fraternal network works.
Yeah,
Really is.
So, and I'll put out a plug for all the colleges. There's 100. Last I knew, there was 189 programs in New England to play at alone, between Division One, Division Two, and Division Three. And I always tried to push some of the kids, look beyond Alabama. I get it; they all go to some of the local schools and play great lacrosse and whatnot. But if they're willing to take a look and go further north, there's a whole bunch of lacrosse out there and a whole new horizon if they really wanted to. And what I'm trying to say is there's a program for every ability
Yes.
in the game. If you want to go to a good college and still want to play lacrosse at some level.
That is so true. We get parents, as coaches, we get parents that ask us all the time with our high school players, hey, do you think our son or our daughter has the ability to play in college? And my answer is unequivocally yes, because like you said, there are programs for everybody. Not everybody has to play D1 to be competitive.
No.
Not everyone has to play D2 or even on the high side of D3 to be competitive. There are some Division III programs who are taking players walking straight out of their class and playing lacrosse for the first time. And there's MCLA, there's NAIA, there's all sorts of options out there available. And so what I tell them is some advice I actually got from a friend of mine. You may know him, Fred Haas, former pro player.
Sure, yeah.
Player. He said, make sure that the kids find a college they can enjoy if they're not playing lacrosse. But lacrosse is like dessert because it's just you get a chance to do it and you get a few more extra years of putting your cleats in the grass and playing a fun, competitive game that you may not have thought that you had the opportunity to do after high school. So yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that we can end on that. Jeff, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
I'll just give you my cell number. Is probably the easiest. Area code 313 610 5405. Now that's a Detroit area code, but that's just my company that I work for. That's where they're based.
Okay.
But I'm happy to help anybody, talk to anybody, just continue talking about the game. It's a real treat, and it's been a real pleasure to come on here and kind of talk about some good times that I had, some great times in the Panhandle.
Well, if we do it right, Jeff, this won't be the last time. We'd like to keep this thing going because we want to continue to highlight some of the great players and coaches out here. Like we said, we've got some really great programs. So, JP, do we have anything else for this guy?
I'm good. Maybe
All right.
we get a round table going with a bunch of guys sometime soon. That would be like
be fun.
That would be fun. I've done plenty of those.
Yeah.
All
right. Jeff, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening. As always, you can find us at First City Lacrosse or at First City Lax on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can like, share, follow these episodes on Spotify, Pandora, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. And of course, you can check them out on YouTube. That's all we got for today. Get your reps in. Be a good human. We will see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
If you like what you hear, drop us a like and follow wherever you downloaded this podcast from and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at First City Labs. Check back every week for more content. Thank you for being a part of the First City Lacrosse Podcast.